Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for having me. Okay, so typically I don't prefer to share my experience typically because I think it's more important we talk about other things. But in this case, I did feel intuitively led to share again today. So I'm going to start just by sharing my experience for those who haven't heard it before. And if you have heard it, I'm sorry. And then after I'm done sharing, I'm definitely open for any conversation or questions, or please do interject in the middle. This is a dialogue, and I love when we have a group together like this, that we can have that sharing. Truly, when we have this many people who are united in a focus and in an energy, it is a beautiful thing. It is a powerful thing. And, we come through so many different walks of life and stresses and distractions so that when we can come together and put aside this time to focus toward the divine and toward what we really are, it can be very powerful. So please do interrupt if something comes to you. So before I start, I just have to say that everything I'm about to say today is just totally beyond language. Like the moment we open our mouth and try to speak about this, we are already wrong because language is very limited, because our language is based in our world of form. And our true nature transcends the entire world of form. The world of form arises within what we are, and what we are transcends all of the form, all the limitation, all the definitions that we think are so real. Like we transcend, as an example, linear time and discrete location. Those are two big things that to us seem fundamental. Of course, there's linear time, and of course, we're separate from each other. But those are not fundamental states. That's just something we come to experience here. So I'm just pointing that out because our language is based on these assumptions that are not fundamental. So there's a huge limitation there. My body is 41 right now. And when I was 30, I took up a meditation practice. And after a few months, I began to have non-physical experiences, out-of-body experiences. And I also began to have pre-birth memory return to me that I had remembered when I was a young child. So up until the age of 4 or 5, and definitely not any longer by 6 or 7, I had memory of my incarnation process and why I came to Earth. And I knew that this is just a place we're coming to visit. This isn't like fundamentally real. It's just, it's like a neat game or something that we can come and engage. And it was very matter of fact to me as a very young child. But then I forgot, because the more we focus here on the physical, the deeper the veil becomes. That's just the nature of our focus and of the way the veil works. I just use the term veil, and I'll get more into this, but I'm just using that word for the constraints that we agree to adopt when we engage the physical, when we come to have a human experience. So when I was 30, this pre-birth memory began to return to me again. And when it did, it was like the most natural thing in the whole world. It was like somebody had just blown leaves off of the ground. Oh yeah, and there's the ground. Like just totally normal, not exceptional. Okay, so I remember very, very long ago, before I had ever been physical, before I had any physical experience, coming across a being who had been physical. And when I came across this being, I could... because there's a knowing that's shared, and there's a telepathy and an exchange of feeling and knowing that is very complete. And so when I came across this being, I could feel this incredible power in who he was, this joy and this freedom and this power and this depth and this just incredible richness in the I guess the only word I can think of is essence of who he was, in the substance of his nature. It was just so full of joy and depth and power. And I asked him, my goodness, like, what could you possibly have done to be this? And he shared with me that he had lived physical lives. And he shared with me one in particular where he had suffered from a long-term health condition, an ailment of some kind that was very painful, physically painful. And the way that he chose to meet this experience allowed a certain refinement of his being. That's the only way I can put it. It allowed a deepening and an enriching of who he is, who he was and who he is. And it was, and how he met this experience and how he met it with love and acceptance, even though it was very, very hard for him at the time. And I was so inspired, and I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it. I am going to do it. And he said, and again, this is beyond language, so it's complex, but he communicated to me something to the effect of, yeah, that's what they all say. Like it's hard in a way you don't know. And I said, okay, that's okay. I'll want to do it. He said, well, go talk to your guides. So I don't have right after that, but I do remember finding him later after I had lived many experiences, and he was very encouraging. Like I shared with him, like, see, I'm on this path. Like I'm not all the way there yet, but I'm doing it. I'm on this path, this evolutionary path. And he was encouraging. Okay, so the majority of my pre-birth experience memory is of a time that is somewhat immediately preceding this life, where I had taken a long break after a previous life. And I was hesitant to return to the physical. And words are so limiting in this, but it was like I was relaxing and yet shining and participating in creative endeavors. But I was free, and it was kind of like having I hate having to try to put words on this, but it was like having a very long weekend or something, and just or maybe a long vacation in between jobs or something, I don't know, and being reluctant to go back. And I remember this guide coming to me again and again and saying, are you ready to go back yet? Are you ready to go back yet? And putting him off, like, no, I'm not ready yet. No, I'm not ready yet. And finally being like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. And I remember reviewing with this guide what I can only describe as like my state, like who I am, who I had been, and all the qualities that I knew. And I don't want to use the word developed because that makes it sound like the qualities are fundamental, but these qualities that I had maybe mastered is a better word. But there was one very clear, like obvious thing that I needed to work on. I don't like the word work on either, because that makes it sound like a task. It's not a task. But there was this one area that had bested me in a previous life. It was a fear. And this fear in a previous life was so powerful and hard for me to manage that I ended up dying an agonizing death in that life, because it took me over and I was very egoic, and I had damaged a lot of other people. And when I say damage other people, I have to say that the soul can't be damaged. The soul can never truly be damaged. I'm meaning the characters that other people were playing. I caused damage to them in their experience. So I reviewed this and I knew that I wanted to re-engage this fear. I wanted to meet this again and process this and integrate this, because if I could do that, I knew the expansion of being that was possible was just unbelievably, it would be so powerful and so beautiful and such a service, not only in my own growth, but a service to all that is. If I could do this, it would just be so amazing. But I knew even from there, okay, so from that side, that there's no possible way to fail and that you are immortal and that you cannot be truly harmed. But I also knew that this vibration was so low that it would be very difficult. So I asked, has it ever been done before? Has any other being in all of creation ever engaged a vibration that's this extreme in this way? And I was told yes. And you have all of time available to you to do so. There's no hurry. And I just thought, and this sounds so strange to me as like the human character, because I deal with challenges. I have anxiety at times. I have biochemical issues at times, just like everybody else. But at the time I thought very confidently, if it can be done, I will do it. Like if it's possible to do, I just knew my strength. I knew what we are, not just me personally, but all of us. I knew what we are. And so they brought me a life that was very optimal for that intention. It wasn't this life. It was a preceding life. And I reviewed that life in great detail, and I accepted that life. And then I accepted the veil. So the only way I can describe this, it's like, at least for me, at least the way I experienced it, it's like a huge, huge drop in your vibration. So if you imagine the body of your awareness right now, like the body that you feel, like it feels like your body right now, but that aliveness that you are, if you imagine that connected to everything and in total bliss and strength and connectedness and knowing, all the knowing is accessible. Imagine going from a place of that down, 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 lower, 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 lower. I like to describe it like an amplifier that produces a pitch. Like if you have like a, and then you turn the knob down, and then when you get to the bottom, you turn it down more, and then more, and then more, 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 and then keep going down more, and then go down some more. That was what it felt like in the body of my awareness, in my consciousness, to go down, 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 and have all my knowing be cut off, and have all of my connectedness disappear. And okay, so I arrived, but within seconds of arriving, I was like, I am not doing this. This is not happening. This is so low vibration. This is so dark. I feel like I've lost everything that I am. I am not doing this. And basically I responded out of fear. I had a lot of fear immediately rise up, and I wasn't even born yet. I mean, I was in the womb, but I had so much fear that I mustered my might and I smote the veil. I fought my way back out again. And I was successful in doing that because I was on the other side and I had a life review, just like near-death experiencers describe, except my life was very short. But I had a life review and I became aware of how my fear, okay, so what I didn't say is that by rejecting this, I had killed the fetus that was to be my body. And so I had caused a miscarriage for the mother. And so I became aware of how my fear had negatively impacted the mother. And not only the mother, but hundreds of other people in like ripples out from her, whose lives would be made more difficult because of my fear. And, I went in with all these great intentions, but this is what actualized, what I actualized because of my fear was this damage. So I knew I still wanted to do this, but I didn't want to fail again. I mean, it's not really failure because from that side, everything's okay. Everything's fine. But I didn't want to do that again. So I spent some time in a place that I can only describe as a veil acceptance simulator. It's like a room where you go and practice surrendering your control to the veil without fighting it. It's like going into a room with a really dark, deep pool. And it's like they push you under the water and then you just hold your breath under the dark water for a while. And then you cry uncle. You can cry uncle if you want, and they'll let you out because it's just a simulator. And I can tell you, by the way, that the real veil is a lot more difficult than the simulator. The simulator is not the same, but I did that for a while. I practiced. And then eventually they brought me this life. And this life was pretty good. It wasn't as perfect as the first life would have been for my intentions of meeting this fear, but it was pretty good. And I remember reviewing what I can only describe as a vast flowchart of millions and millions of possibilities of how this life might unfold, and experiencing what it would be like to be me ahead of time in these various branches. Like maybe if you take a tree and lay it on its side and you start at the trunk and then you work your way out to the branches, with certainty being high at the front end and certainty being less likely as you go further out, as more and more choices are made by everyone in the simulation. I was experiencing what it was like to potentially experience these branches. And I knew that it was very likely that a trauma would crush me in my 20s and allow me to have the chance to re-engage this fear. And I also made certain requests. Like, for instance, I asked if I could be male because I knew that in this case, there was a certain element to being male that would be helpful. And I also knew that my parents would be very important, that they would instill certain qualities in me, like my father would instill a confidence in me. And I needed that confidence so that I could have like a rock to stand on when the fear came. So I reviewed all this and I was super excited. Like, if there's one emotion I can communicate that is the key emotion, it's excitement. Even though I knew I would probably be crushed and traumatized. I know this sounds maybe pretty unacceptable to the human ego perspective, but from that perspective, I was super excited to be going out a certain distance in a direction further than I'd ever gone before, because I knew the potential of it. I knew how much incredible growth, and that is the growth of joy and love, that was possible if I could do this. And I remember there having to be a moment to say yes, and I don't remember that moment, but I do remember then being in like a waiting area. And then this guide coming to me and getting my attention very abruptly, like, go now. like very almost like rude, like grabbing me by the shoulders and like, now, right now. And then I'm like, okay, now. And then I was in this place that, oh man, it looked like, and again, this isn't, it's very hard to describe, but it was like a mechanic shop or a tinker's workshop or something. And there were these beings there that are very technical in nature. I like to call them tinkers or something. And they do this thing, at least for me, they did this thing where they somehow match the veil to me. So like the veil, so the spirit has all these qualities, all this richness, all this nature, and then the life and the circumstances and the biology. And by the way, I knew the biology in this life was really important because I knew that this biology has something that is missing, like maybe a genetic issue. I don't know exactly what it is, but something that's an issue that's going to make my day-to-day experience hard. And I do experience that. But anyway, so there's this thing they do where they match the veil with the total package. I don't know how to describe it, but with the body and the circumstances. And they did that. And then I was in this place that looked like a pit, like over it. And I'm getting ready to dive down this shaft. And they asked me one last time, are you sure? And I knew that once I said yes here, I was in for the ride. It was like no getting off the roller coaster until the roller coaster comes to a complete stop kind of thing, you know? So I remember saying yes. And then once again, the veil coming over me and this plummet in vibration, down, 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 lower, 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 and having all of my knowing be cut off and all of my connectedness disappear. And I like describing it like arriving into the vacuum of space, like going to a place where there's just no heat, there's no air, there's no nothing. And simultaneously, it's so dense. So it's like super dense, but also super empty. That was what arriving to the body felt like by comparison. And so this time I just tried to not fight it. This time my goal was just don't resist, don't let it, don't fight it this time. And then ascending, and I was there for a while and I just waited and I waited. And then I sent one message back to the technicians. Did it take? Like, did the veil take? And they sent one ping back, yes. And I was very excited because I knew that I had made it. Like I felt accomplished that I had made it. Okay, so then I was here for a while in the womb. And then eventually I'm like, you know what? I am not doing this. This is not happening. This is so dark. This is so low vibration. I am not myself. I am not going to tolerate this for a lifetime. There is no way. So once again, I began to summon my strength to fight my way out. And as I did that, the most holy moment of my entire human journey happened. The only way I can describe it is the great presence of God, what we call God, the I am presence of all that is, came to me. And I felt myself expand back out, and I felt the universe within me, and I felt the churning bliss of our sun. I'm sorry. And the Spirit said to me, this is still what you are. You can never not be this. So that super calmed me, because I knew that if I'm still that, there's nothing that I don't. So that's great. That's wonderful. I don't need to fight, So I let go into the simple existence of being in the womb. And I was there for a while. And the next memory I have is of being born. I remember the shock of it. It was just sense data overload, cold, touching, sound. I remember looking up at the nurses, who I now know are nurses. At the time, I had no idea at all what was going on. I had no intellectual understanding at all. But I knew that there were these beings there taking care of me. And I felt so much love for the nurses, and I felt so much curiosity. I remember looking around and being like, what is happening? What is going on? And I was so curious. But it was very shocking. And that's basically it. Was just and I have one visual image memory of the day I was born, and later I drew the room from my mother. I remember where my mom's bed was, and where the window was, and where the heating grate was, and where the doctor was standing. And later in life, I drew that from my mother, and she confirmed it was correct. I mean, I knew it would be, but I remember that. And then I don't have any memories after that for, a while. I mean, I have a few very vague memories of being in my crib here and there, but nothing substantive. But then as I got older, I used to refer back to the flowchart memory and like cheat to see what was going to happen. Like just with simple things like who's going to come over to our house tomorrow, or what are we going to have for dinner? Like just because I was curious. And I assumed that everybody knew that we were just visiting this place and we were just playing this game. We're playing these roles. Nobody really talks about it, but we're just doing this thing. And then one day, and this is just an example of a time when I realized as a young child that I was not in Kansas anymore, kind of thing. My parents had a neighbor friend over to our house, and I was in a diaper. I remember standing at the edge of this couch in my diaper and not being able to walk very well, but this music being on. I remember telling them, watch me dance, and then shaking my little tush to this funky music on the record player. And I remember this neighbor just walked away unimpressed. And when she did, I was like, she can't feel what I'm feeling. Because in other reality systems, it's super normal to be able to feel each other and to be able to feel exactly what we're feeling. Like there's no obfuscation like there is here. Like here we feel separate. We can't really feel what each other's feeling. So when she walked away, I was like, I was just dumbfounded. I'm like, I remember feeling like, wow, this world is so alien. Like what is this place that we can't feel each other's emotions? What is going on? Like it was very alarming. So that's a summary. As I mentioned earlier, I don't really think it's that important to share the story. I think what's far more important is that we really remind each other of what we really are. Because we are far, far more than this human experience. We're far more than the human character. The human character is super convincing. I get it. I get wrapped up in it every day, in the story. But who you are is you. You're the you that feels like you to you. That is who you are. And that you think means human. You think it means your name. You think it means male or female and your job and your relationships and all the stories that we get tied up within. But you're actually far more than all that. It's just a very, very deep simulation, I guess, or a dream. But simulation is probably a good word that you're engaged with that seems very convincing. And that is what we're doing here now. We've come to engage a reality system that is extremely, like we're at the far end of the spectrum of separation. Like separation is not native to who we are, but man, if you want to experience being separate, this is what you do. Like this is the place to come. And if you really want to deal with things on your own and not be able to feel everybody else, this is the opportunity. And of course, the great irony is that most of us want to get out. Life here can be very, very difficult at times. I mean, I definitely experienced that. The last few days I have not felt well. That's part of how the human experience goes sometimes. But that is actually an incredible, precious opportunity. And I know the ego doesn't like that. And that's okay. Ego is just ego just arises from fear. Fear is just the word that we use for yet unevolvedness, an experience that we have not yet fully integrated. And this is the place we can come to integrate experience, to have unique experience that can allow the expansion of the horizon, of the frontier of what is. And it gives us a context through which we can make choices. This is really important. Choices that are hopefully love-based and not fear-based. That's the name of the game, is love. Love is the name of the game. If there's nothing else that we have to remind each other of or tell each other, it's that we are beings of love and there is nothing to fear. And that is the most important message we can tell each other every day. We are beings of love. You are completely unconditionally loved, and there's nothing to fear. So I think that's the most important message we can share. Okay, so I say I already went on for half an hour, so I guess I'll step back and open up for any questions, or I can just go on about any topic. But I'm honored to be able to share it here in this format because, like we've come all this way. Like look at this. Like we've come all this way. Every person here has had a heck of a journey. We're way out in the wilderness but we all know there's something more than what we see in front of our physical eyes. And here we are having that touch point to remind each other out in the wilderness. We're just on a walk, a walk in the physical. That's the name of my book, A Walk in the Physical, because we're just visiting. We're just here on a journey. And so if we can meet each other out here in the woods, in the weeds, while we're all covered with mud, it's pretty awesome.